And we are live. Thursday, April 9th. Welcome to your daily sigh of relief. I hope you all feel as much relief as I feel as we reach the end of the day and realize, man, I'm all the way caught up. Thank God I tuned into that amazing show with those amazing people. This has been awesome. What a phenomenal use of my time. I should do this every day, 6 p.m. Eastern. Uh, Hello everybody. My name is Kasim. If you don't know who I am, and this is your first time here, I go live every single day at 6 p.m. And to the very best of my ability, I give you everything that I think matters from an entrepreneurial perspective across business, AI, markets, policies, platforms. And then I open it up to the council. And the council is just a collection of entrepreneurs that gather together and talk about what's going on and how we stay relevant, how we stay ahead of the curve. Today, I'm really excited to welcome a friend, a guest speaker, Allan Hansen. He's going to be talking to us about how AI really works. He's been studying it for 25 or some odd years. I didn't realize that it had existed that long. So that'll be fun. Before we do that, let's get into some of the news stories. Prior to the news, remember you can subscribe to the Daily Sigh and receive a daily or weekly summary of everything that we talk about. Just go to dailysigh.ai. You can always join the live call on Zoom by going to dailysigh.ai and clicking the little join live button. Don't forget to check the calendar in the Free Forever community for future guests. We have Tommy Mello coming next Tuesday, which I'm really excited about. Let's dive in. Our top story comes from Let's Data Science. AI is set to displace 28% of all jobs in the entire country of Ireland. A new report states that 28% of all jobs in Ireland face a high risk AI displacement within a decade. To be honest with you, 28% in a decade feels so low. I'm like, y'all think that 70% of the jobs are going to last a decade? There's no way. And this is what the article says. This is a concrete country level forecast showing that job displacement is a measurable, accelerating trend rather than a hypothetical risk. I think they're way off and very optimistic, actually. Global Venturing reports Microsoft corporate venturing essential for survival. Microsoft's M12 venture arm admits that corporate venturing is now essential for survival because internal R&D is too slow to keep up with AI. We know that. If you don't have an R&D department in your company, I don't care how small you are, I think that you're asking to be taken out by the meteor that is AI. National Today reports private equity admits AI broke their valuation models. Investment giants like Apollo warn that traditional software valuation metrics are becoming useless because of AI. That's interesting. If you're building a company to sell, the finish line and the definition of value are shifting. So if you want to make an exit, pay attention. From TechCrunch, Canva acquires Orto. Canva is moving to automate marketing agencies through strategic AI acquisitions. Oh, good. Canva's killing its customers. That's great. Smart, Canva. From TechCrunch, AI agents via SMS, a new service called Pokey allows anyone to command AI agents simply by texting. Technical barriers are dropping to zero. Your only edge is the strategic wisdom of what to ask. From TechCrunch, autonomous mining trucks. AI is now automating haulage trucks in Utah copper mines. Uh-oh. I just bought a septic truck for $125,000. Hope they don't get to septic too soon. Anthropic's Project Glasswing, a cybersecurity initiative that uses AI for automated vulnerability scanning. AI can now replace or augment paid security tools with zero extra headcount. We will see how long that takes before it just kills the entire industry. Now, let everybody in the Zoom room. Killing all your note takers, by the way, and reporting them to Zoom. Just kidding. Here we go. Letting the council in. If you want to join us live, don't forget you can go to dailysigh.ai. Join the Free Forever community. Join the call. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm gonna call you. Want to come say hi? Can I see the drawing? Wow, did you just do this? A 9-year-old just did a draw. Who is this? Gojo. Gojo's from Jujutsu Kaisen, and he has blue eyes. Is this for me? Will you put your name on it? You did? Where? Thanks, buddy. I love you. All right. Neil, Larkin, Steve, Jason, Allan, Jason Croft, Sharif, Elliot, Dylan. Uh, I'm excited that y'all are here. I'm especially excited for our guest, to be honest with you, because he's brilliant and fun to listen to. Allan, are you there? Do you exist? Are you a real boy?
Hello, gents. I am indeed here.
Yo, brother. Thanks
Thank
for
you for
being here, man.
inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here. Shout out to Elliot for bringing Allan to the council.
There we go.
Um, just to repeat the ethos for guests, we want to be respectful of Allan's time. You're here live, so ask questions. If anybody wants to reach out to Allan after the fact, expect it to be a paid engagement. There's no picking of brains. Uh, Allan, appreciate you, brother. Uh, I
Appreciate
imagine
you.
you have something teed up for us, and then if you don't mind, what I'll do is my best of my abilities moderate the conversation, and feel
Yes.
free to break at regular intervals if you want to take questions.
Sounds great. So I didn't fully know the format here, so I'm just jumping straight in and starting the conversation with the topic that I might introduce today, which is something that I call intelligent context. And um, what we have learned over the last couple of years with AI, with LLMs in particular, is that context is king. A lot of slides have started with that, a lot of presentations. But I also want to say why it isn't quite the story that we have been telling so far. Um, a language model on its own doesn't know anything in particular. Um, it knows a lot of things in general, basically. So it has read millions of contracts, millions of notes, medical notes, internal memos, roughly the entire internet, right? What it has not read is your contract or your patient or your policy, your company's specific rules about who can access what, under which conditions, and all of these things, basically. And this is why, if you want to deploy language models responsibly, you have to give it the accurate, correct context. And in the best case scenario, it has to know how to reason on this context, basically. So what we had so far was retrieval systems like RAG, vector databases, bigger and bigger token windows, chunking strategies, hybrid search, all of these things, but it was always treated as just a payload. So you got the context, you did a semantic search, you got some text back, and you basically put it um, into the model's context window, and you hoped that the model would figure out what actually mattered in the text that you gave it. So the theory was retrieval is hard, reasoning is easy because you just hand it off to the LLM. Now, what I'm saying is that this worked okay for a while, but what we didn't see after a while was that it started getting uh, facts right, but basically context wrong. So you had a correct, for example, classifications, correct counts, etc., but it couldn't reason over the context that it was given. It missed rules basically in the context it was given. So what we have been optimizing for was simply just benchmarking over the chunking and the retrieval and everything, but we missed the idea of structure in the text itself and matching that structure to the context that you had in your data. So, for example, what kind of rule is it that you have in your data? Who does it apply to? What does it cover? What is it, a permission? Is it an obligation? Is it an exception? All of these things that are very relevant to companies when they engage with AIs. And I mean, it doesn't only necessarily have to be internal rules, it can also be external regulations that apply specifically to these guys and not to other guys. So my proposal is that we need to understand how context can be embedded with LLMs in a smarter way. How can LLMs um, engage with the rules and the context of your company? and how do we do it in a way where we're sure that the rules are applied in a fashion that's secure and provable, basically, or
Mm.
let's say explainable. I would rather use that word. Um, so there's been a couple of examples of, by the way, just stop me at any given point in time if there are any questions. I mean, I hope this is more of a conversation than me presenting. Um, so if there are any questions, please feel free to stop me at any time, basically.
Well, can I just, if you don't mind, maybe focus the conversation a little because what you've said, I
Please.
think, generally makes sense. But if we were to talk about specific application and implementation,
Yeah.
the ask is always like, what do we do? What's the action item? So if you're talking to small
Yeah.
businesses, and small business is way different than enterprise or the
Yes.
context is difficult because context is expensive to gather and upkeep.
Yes.
But it's critically important too. So how do you bridge that gap for an SMB?
For a small company, I think the best current approach that I've seen maybe is the idea from Carpathy, where he basically uses the LLMs as kind of little pseudo reasoners, where he basically deploys them as different agents that consumes texts and creates a wiki in MD files from the text that is given to them, and creates summarizations of the text, kind of like wiki style, and backlinks with relations between the different papers that he is feeding to the LLM. So he splits it up into three different components or agents, let's say. There's a compiler that takes the raw material, turns it into a structured wiki, and creates summaries. And he calls another one the librarian, which basically maintains this wiki, checks the contradictions, lints it, and then there's an answerer that basically reads over the different summaries and feeds back to the user the specific uh, concepts and ideas that is kept in the wiki. So it's not doing semantic search over a vector database. It basically creates this, what can you say, like a graph-based wiki that links different files and knowledge files together and compresses that knowledge into summaries, and then uh, the query, the answerer, he calls it, reads the structured artifact and not the original material, and finds the context and reasons over the context before it is given back to the consumer, let's say. So that's one way that I think is an idea for structuring your data in a way, and your agents in a way where you can simply look into the data that you have, the context, and make sure that uh, yeah the LLM has the context it needs to be guided in the right direction.
Hmm. Can I make a ignorant and unfounded assertion, Alan, and then ask you to contend with it?
Never ignorant, I say.
Well, just wait.
No, all
So
right.
as you were talking, here's the thing that occurred to me that I don't know if this is as insightful as it feels.
Hmm.
Um, Data pre-AI uh was meant for like averaging basically. You took, and at least that's the way that I always used it. I come from a media buying background, so we would take all the data we could get, the more data the better, and then we'd figure out, generally speaking, insert a general answer here. So your bounce rate is
Yeah.
this, which means your paging game is bad, or your open rate is low, which means your subject line is whatever.
Yeah.
So data pre-AI was meant for broad assumptions, general actions, large, big, sweeping, etc. As you were
Hmm.
describing is it Bicky? How do you spell that?
Wiki, just like a Wikipedia, basically.
Oh,
Wiki.
Wiki. Dude, I'm so sorry.
Wiki.
Did I just get
Sorry,
that
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 was
was a
maybe
little
my
racist, wasn't it?
pronunciation. It's a
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the as you're describing the wikis, the thing that I thought was interesting, um, as you think through the use cases in a post AI world, big data actually allows for like ultra granular actioning. So like you could have every customer that it currently engages with you inside of these wikis broken out kind of the way that you said, right? It's like import, librarian, update, whatever.
Yeah.
And now customer communication is done on an individual and granular level, or product updates and specifications are done on individual and granular levels. So again, I don't know if this is, it feels like an unlock for me, but I'm curious if
That'd be
if you
good.
think that that's like the broad swing where AI collected context and maybe this needs to change the way that we think or the paradigm shift, but it moves us from like, broader updates to individual actioning. I'll pause there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good way of looking at it, from the practical perspective. Um, I think that the most important part of it is really to start thinking about how do we make our context smarter, in the sense that it's not only the LLM is really only as smart as how well it's guided when it comes to getting the right data context and constrain it to some degree in a specific direction. Otherwise, what happens, um, or what can happen, is that it can split off in a wrong direction, basically, and continue down a path that it took a wrong turn. I'm not sure if you've all experienced this, but I certainly have experienced the idea of giving it some context, but because it comes pre-programmed with biases in it, in the sense of saying it obviously has some generality embedded in it. If you want it to go in a specific, or to have a specific scope, explore a specific space of concepts, then you do need to sometimes constrain it in that direction. And that's what we use context for. Basically, we
Mm.
guide it in a direction. Um, so it's very helpful to have, what can you say? And this is also, I think, why, for example, Anthropic is doing a lot out of doing these plugins and skills now that basically allows you to manage the context that you're feeding to the LLM in a automated fashion. So you can do these skill agents now that have access to your databases, have access to your, browsing the internet, whatever it may be, that when you activate them, they go and collect. It's kind of like the wiki, but the wiki is more structured. But I'm just pulling up the example to say this is the direction it's going in terms of saying smarter and smarter context gives better and better executions, makes the LLMs better at executing in the direction you want it to execute in, basically.
Dylan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I want to start by saying, Cosm, the concept he's describing, we've been discussing for a few days now, and Jason shared a Claude skill yesterday that enables that. I will share it again. Um, Thank you to Jason for finding that. Jason Sakel. Forgive me if I mispronounce. Uh, so I find the Carpathes wiki creation concept very interesting. I've only seen it as human facing. I have not seen a specific implementation as using it for, as context. Um, and I've been curious about making it available to your agents. And I feel like it's probably more of a file system question, but do you have any thoughts on how you would um, make this data store machine facing as opposed to human facing through Obsidian, which is the typical setup?
Uh, yeah, sure. I mean, again, from my perspective, whenever you have something like his wiki style file system, it's just a matter of creating a bridge for the agent to be able to connect with it. So in the end, it is just data. And if you have a skill that you can activate, you don't have to activate that through Obsidian, right? I mean, Obsidian is just the interface to the data, but it would be very easy. I mean, well, relatively speaking, of course, to create a skill where you simply let the skill say when you start up this skill, what it does specifically is you could even make it let's say a marketing skill, right? Now that marketing skill, the first thing you do when what it does when you activate it is go and find in the wiki what is my jobs for the day. Maybe it has some specific guidelines. Maybe it has a structure that it needs to execute in terms of going to um, I don't know, to LinkedIn and find some people that it needs to compile in order to again uh, do its job for the day, let's say. Um, and maybe after it has done that, it can update the wiki with the specific knowledge that it has created by scouring LinkedIn for information. It would hand off the information to the compiler agent. The compiler agent would take the information, could be a web page, whatever it may be, from one of the prospects that the agent has found, and the compiler now has a web page from that specific user um, that can be used as knowledge for how to connect with this particular company. So it would put would take the company's web page, put it into the wiki, and now for the next time that information is accessible. Now, next time, maybe um, it would meet the competitor to this. I'm coming up with a, a particular example on the fly here, so I hope it makes sense. It would have another competitor to this prospect here. It could also, again, put that into the wiki, and now it could use this knowledge base to compare whenever it was doing a marketing announcement or something like this. Again, uh, I think efficient agents are only as efficient as the context they have when they execute. And this is why you want to have the absolute top of the line context fed into them and not irrelevant context either, because you don't want to bloat the context window. It is really an important part of managing your LLMs efficiently is to be concise with the context you provide them. So not, a lot of people that I see make the mistake of, for example, again, a quick example on the fly, when I see someone vibe coding, and they get a mistake, they tell the LLM there's an error, and fix it, and don't provide the LLMs with the context that I clicked this button and then I opened this one and then I went here and then I did that. Now, if it has this context, the LLM will be 100 times more efficient at fixing the errors in your code base, because it will know what space it can explore of possible errors within that given frame or cone of sorry, I do this with my hands because whenever I talk about LLMs, I imagine a vector space that is basically like this is where they live. This is, and they can search specific spaces in this vector space. And the more you constrain it, the less likely it is to venture off into a space that's not relevant for what you want it to do, essentially. So again, just coming back, just want to emphasize it in this call, how you create your context is immensely important, and this is how you make the agents be much more efficient, token efficient, and execution smart, basically, with what they do.
Alan, is there an easy way to capture context so that you're still data sovereign? Because so many of these tools are proprietary to a degree that, like it enters you find yourself in a position where you're like, actually, I don't know any of that shit ChatGPT does now.
Yeah.
So is there like is there a Switzerland for data? Like where do you go? Where do you hold all your context?
Well, I mean, if it's very, proprietary, what it is you're doing and working with, then obviously I would always say there are smart enough open source model that you can run. Like the new Gemma 4 that was just released is very clever. Um, and that can run on quite simple software, actually. I mean, hardware. So if you're really doing something that is highly sensitive, then you have the option of running your own models, right?
I'd
And
be
a lot
less
of
concerned about, for me anyway, I don't know, I can't speak for the council, obviously, but I'm less concerned about proprietary content and more concerned about my ability to move, as different tools outpace other tools.
all
How
right,
are you
yeah.
creating a database where you're like, you can just plug and play? Or is that possible? Have you cracked that code yet?
I mean, if you want to make it easy for yourself and you just want to use models that are fit for purpose, Open Router is a good idea, to use that, because basically what they've created is a way to detect also if you have a specific request, it evaluates the request and routes it to a specific model that might be best suited for the request you have, basically.
So does does it hold context? I think I misunderstood what OpenRouter is.
Well, I mean, that's just routing the models, right? To the models that then execute. The context is not held at Open Router, no. So you separate the two. Context is what you have in your database or in your, wiki, and the LLMs just, you know, you consider them as being I consider them as being instances, right? I mean,
Mm.
you have Claude that has 1 million tokens capacity in a context window, but the context is separated from that. And when you open that new context window, you have to, again, access your wiki, access your database. I mean, um, and then pick out specifically what data you need this particular context instance to be fed in order to be efficient at the task you want it to do, right? Should it have access to function execution? Should it have access to accessing other data? What should it have access to? It needs to know what to do and what tools it has available. That's the best way to do it, basically. Be smart about how you um, kickstart. And I call it agents, right? If you
Mm.
want them to execute autonomously, they need to be to some degree modeled. That's maybe a better way of putting it.
I don't want to slow down the conversation, so
No,
I
no.
think I'm going to protect all of us from me. Here's what I'll say, and I bet you I speak for some tax relevance, some of humanity. I understand philosophically what you're saying.
Okay.
Context is wildly important. We need to utilize the context on a per implementation basis, etc.
Mhm.
Where I'm struggling is I think it's the tech stack or the interface. So,
The
like
what? Sorry?
the tech stack or interface or how to sew
Yeah,
it all together to allow for what you just said. Like, what's the
yeah,
decision engine that's choosing what context is most appropriate for what task? What's the decision engine that's choosing the engine that executes on that
yeah,
context? Where
yeah.
is the context being held? It's and I don't know that we need to solve this right now. And I do think it actually it kind of it stops the conversation from being actionable until we've put pen to page in a way. So
Well, I mean, I will say that it's not as currently. I mean, okay, so Anthropic again, they did just released this new agent manager today, I think it was.
Should have been in the
That
Daily Sigh. How did I not get that?
okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can always follow me for the news when it comes to AI, at least, not anything else. Um,
How do we follow you, dude? What's the
Well, I don't really publish much, to be fair. It's more like well, I guess I keep it to myself, except in this call. I do participate in a couple of Discord groups that are highly technical AI people, so that's where I get most of my news from. I don't have like a feed or anything that I publish. Maybe I should, but I feel like the Discord groups I'm part of kind of they do a good job of it. So, but I can provide some can I say subgroups that I think would be a good idea to be part of as well.
Yeah, I'd love
If
to hear him.
yeah,
Jason, you've got your hand up. You have a question?
Oh gosh, I got sidetracked already. When we're talking about context and structuring, Alan, how would you recommend approaching like grepping and globbing for a search? So even if you have like a research agent, right?
yeah,
And then that research agent before the agent orchestrator that Claude, for want of a better term right now, sends it out,
yeah.
you give very clear instructions to the agent orchestrator before they dispatch the research agent.
Hmm.
Do a glob on this, and then once you get that, do a grep here, and then XML. You understand what's going on up here, but I'm having a
Sure.
hard time getting these words out because it makes sense to me, but maybe not for everybody. So if you can put it in simpler language.
Well, I mean, I think well, to me at least, you made sense. Karpathy in his system basically just does text search, right? I mean, that's it. And because he has the summaries, they're very concise. So it is very, to some degree, rudimentary. Now, that's not, I think it's a good intermediary system, right? I mean, I'll be straightforward with you guys as well. I don't personally think that that's the end goal. It's a good, short-term goal to have this system that can really, you let the agents find the context for you, basically, by describing in natural language. You know, here I boot up this agent. You say, hey, what's from my database do I want? And then you let the agent scour your data, your files. Now, to me, that's not sufficient in the long term. That's why I'm currently engaged in building my own knowledge system that is maybe more complex than uh, that I know. Well, let's put it like this. I think that uh, when it comes to concepts and rules and connected relational data, what I think you need to do is really create a system that is able to differentiate concepts and rules so you can approximate it in a continuous space and look for the rules themselves, not only look for, specific concepts or specific text, but you actually have a matching system. I call it from a paper that is specifically about it, a tensor logic system, but it is just using specific mathematical, you know, system to encode rules as tensors, basically. And when you have that, what you can do is approximate the distance to those tensors when you have an incoming request. Uh, and when you have matches, you then run a solver. And then this is getting a little bit technical, so I don't know how applicable
Bro,
it
this has
is.
already been a little bit technical.
Yeah, so maybe I'll try and conceptualize it a little
I'm
bit.
actually following you, Alan. Believe it or not,
Yeah,
for some reason, this stuff just makes sense to me. It's weird
okay.
and it's kind of scary,
Good.
but I'm following you. I've been okay.
Yeah, but I don't want to keep everyone else in. So let's just maybe on a conceptual level, it's just about saying when you have a rule that is multi-dimensional, that you can actually put that into a space where you can search for it in distance, kind of like they do in a transformer themselves, but this is based on rules and logic. So logic search, you could say, rather than semantic text search.
It
And
feels
when you
so
have
chicken and
that,
egg though,
hmm,
because context and rules, I mean, the rule is so dependent upon, I need another word for context now. So there's context, there's data context,
yeah,
there's rules that could apply to the context that is the data,
yeah,
and then there's the context of the task.
yes, yes,
So there's task context and data context,
yeah,
and the rule that would exist
yeah,
is the bridge between the task and the data.
yeah,
But I don't know what the task is going to be when I'm storing the data most of the time. So, for example, Grant, who's on this call, is
yeah,
brilliant, brilliant, brilliant with Notebook LM. He's stored all of the calls that we've had for the Daily Sigh so far inside of Notebook. So
correct.
that's data context.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he created an application from it that it's a database application that allows for it's like a directory. So
Hmm.
that's the project context. But the rules that would apply to the data context, it feels impossible to apply those rules until after you know what the task is.
Well, I mean, so my system, I don't wanna, it's not but the way that I approach it is that when I ingest data context, I can say decode it into an actual rule-based, like language has rules embedded in it, basically.
Mhm.
Now, when you consume it, you can deconstruct it into a rule-based space and into a logic um, representation. Let's put it like that. And when you have a logic representation of it, then you can do the similarity search from a logic perspective.
Mm.
Uh, Now, did that not answer your question? Then
No,
maybe
kind of. I think what's happening here is I feel like, and Neil said something so funny. I'm gonna read Neil's chat because I think it's uh, Costum doesn't want to believe that human expression can be represented by vectors. The opposite is true. I actually love the idea that there's a logic that can be applied to data that would put these mechanisms in a position to be able to action on all the data. I
yeah.
honestly just can't wrap my head around it. It
Well,
almost feels like the
yeah,
data gets loaded because the rules are infinite. What you can do with data is infinite.
yeah, sure.
So the data gets loaded. The rules are, let's call it like the Pareto distribution of rules. So you'd apply the 20% of rules that could pertain to 80% of the tasks.
Yeah.
And then whenever you have a task, you almost want to retroactively go through the data and apply rules to data that could apply to that task before you can execute on the task.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like I will just highlight real quick if there's no rule match. I mean, not all data is a match to the rule set that you have in your engine, right?
Hmm.
So again, you know, you have a specific so I call it there's two domain spaces. There's the constitutive space and then there's the regulative normative space, basically. And regulative normative space are rules like you must do this or you may do this. It's like a rule, it's a normative space, practical space, right? And then there's the constitutive space, which is just epistemic. It's just about how do we extract the rules that are embedded in the language that is coming in. It's like,
Mm.
back to Aristotle. I don't want to get too,
No, it's
but
first principles. How do we know what's true?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You
like,
have no idea
you
how much
know,
I've been studying all of this, Alan. It's funny that you brought that up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it is like, again, if you look at Boolean algebra, right? The start of Boolean algebra was George Boole, who looked at Aristotle and he looked at the Stoics, right? And he looked at the quantifiers from Aristotle, like all humans are, immortal. And this is, he has this, the laws of thought, expressed mathematically. And that's kind of how you get the first ideas of, expressing humans' thought as a mathematical language. Now, his ideas was then later on expressed by Frege as predicate logic, but it still is expressible in a mathematical format. I mean, you can use truth tables, and then you can do math, algebra on these well, thoughts, basically, or the laws of how we think about things. Like all humans are mortal is a logical expression that can be expressed mathematically. And that is the idea of saying you deconstruct sentences into specific, you recognize rules by doing mathematical similarity checks, basically.
Elliot,
And
you have your hand up. Oh, sorry.
sorry. Yeah, but first you need to, recognize the rule that is embedded in the language, and then you just simply, again, as I said, you check whether there's a rule that is close to what you have extracted from the data context.
Mm.
If there is what can you say, a similarity, close to similarity, then you can run a solver to check if it is in fact the rule that applies. And you can even say, well, the rule applies, but it's incomplete. For example, I'm missing a qualifier in this rule. So then you can go back to the human or to the LLM and say, hey, the context was great that you gave me, but I'm actually missing a qualifier in order to make sure that this rule is actually the one that you have asked me to evaluate. Again, getting a little bit technical, but the idea is simply just to say, once you have the rules embedded in your context database, and once you have a system that is well enough orchestrated, then you can actually you can search for rules, and you can then make sure, or you can even say something like, you can let the rules suggest plans that are compliant with the rule base as well. So, you know, um,
If I may, Alan, just before we go down that lane, by the way, thanks for your time today. Good to meet you. I think it would be helpful before we talk a bit more about, where we both believe this is going in terms of processes and more advanced context control. If we just go back down the path we've walked down there, and go back to Carpathy, well-known computer researcher, just for people watching as well. If people did want to go 0 to 1 with the best kind of context setup that they can at the moment, not just even talking conceptually, but talking about the platforms themselves, I would be interested in your take on, if you were giving someone with a medium-sized business in America advice on how to look at that. What would be your general advice to them?
Well, I think it would be a good advice just to go. I mean, he has a very in-depth explanation of how it's set up. And as I said before, what you need is just a couple of agents that are activated with the right context. They need, again, he divides it up into 3 entities, let's say, or agents. Let's just call them what they. I don't know. For some reason, I don't like the word agent when they're not fully autonomous, but let's call them anyway, because that's the trend. You have the setup of simply 3 agents that need to execute very specific tasks, which means that you create a file for this agent explicitly outlining what it needs to do. Again, the compiler takes raw material, decomposes it into a structured wiki with links, backlinks, relational links, right? And you have another agent, librarian, maintains this wiki, checks for contradictions, lints it, everything, and the answerer, which is basically going to look for whenever there's a request from a user, it goes and checks the files. Do we have anything in the file structure that matches this request? And those are, again, from a pragmatic or practical perspective, I mean, just setting up a skill file that can execute. Yeah,
Neil.
yeah, Neil, please.
So, in that practical context, so
Mhm.
let's say I've got a small business. I'm, a roofer, right? And I'm employing AI agents for different tasks. There's office admin, and then there's marketing and sales and all these different
Mhm.
kinds of things. Um, I have heard it argued that the better context reference is going to be a single file rather than a hyperlinked wiki like you're describing. Simply because the fetching is, even though these agents promise a certain context window, it's not really what happens in practice. And so, what are your thoughts about flattening? For let's say a given agent needs to know the general company rules and the specific rules for this particular task. What about flattening that into a single thing for that particular agent to reference?
I mean, if it can be in the context window of a single instance, then sure. But if as soon as your context starts growing outside the size of a single context window, then I don't,
Yeah.
I think I trust Carpathy on this, and I am of the same opinion, that then it's better to actually create something that is modularized. So I hope that answers it.
Dylan says the wiki is still a file, not a website, if that isn't clear.
Well, it's a group of files, not.
Yeah.
Yeah, group of files, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, sorry?
Oh, I was going to say other questions for Allan, but if you've got more, keep going.
I don't know if it was an answer about dancing around the incompleteness there, but that might again dive a little bit too deep into the.
That was just something that was occurring to me as you were talking. It's not, we can skip past that.
No, but it is an important thing that I'm considering for my system as well. And that's why I chose a very particular logic that allows for modalities as well, which means that you can just simply have an assertion in a given instance when there is a contradictory pathway. It's quite well known that you know you will have situations where you potentially have two different diverging pathways, and in those instances there needs to still be a computational decision. But in my system, it would then be that the system then evaluates then in a, because I'm using something else than Prolog for the logic engine, it can evaluate situations to say, I usually use the example of a wasp and a bee. Whenever there's a human that's walking outside and you see something, but you hear something buzzing and it's yellow and black, but that's the amount of the data context that you have. Now in your system, it can be a bee, can also be a wasp, but that's all the information you have. That is obviously a contradictory situation where you need to do a computation. In this instance, you could say, well, you can exploit or you can explore. And that could go into either an internal exploration, say, well, I am allergic to wasps, so I simply make the assertion that it's a wasp because it's a high critical instance situation, and that makes it more important that I make a decision that is based on I could die if I don't flee, so it's not important whether it is one or the other. I just make a decision, an assertion. I say it's a wasp, so I make the action based on that internal exploration. Or I can make an external exploration, say I don't know what it is, but it's definitely one or the other. It can't be both. So what I do is I fetch more information. I need more information to say I am. It can be a probability exploration. Say I'm in a city next to an ice cream shop. The probability that it's a wasp is in this instance higher because I have in my knowledge base already wasps are more prevalent in city settings than bees. Than if I was on a meadow with flowers, then a bee would be higher probability. Or it can simply be scour for more information. Look at the wasp. Does it have, pollen sacs on the legs? If you can see that, then, it's a necessity that it's a bee because you know that apodictically, bees have pollen sacs. Otherwise, it's not defined as a bee. And on the other hand, wasps do not. So, just to answer your question about having a situation about a logic system that can make decisions in an incompleteness situation, basically, which is very interesting as well.
Well, can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So, if you have the WASP-B context, or you have the WASP-B data, all
Mhm.
the information you have on WASP, all the information you have on bees, loaded up, that's the context. And then you
Yeah.
have the tools that are taking action on that context. The
Well, that's the
rules,
data. Let me just maybe.
that's the data.
Yes. Now you have some context in your knowledge base about what constitutes a bee and what constitutes a wasp, in the sense of saying, so you have more information in your, database, your knowledge base, I would call it, your ontology. Let's put it like that. That can give you, again, as I said before, more information about what actions you need to make in this situation.
So if you don't mind, Alan, let's stay with the
No, of
WASP and the
course.
bee. What's the difference between data and context?
Data is incoming information. That's the information that you're given externally, and internal ontology context is what you already have information available
Okay, so the
to your
context would
system.
be black and yellow flying with the pollen sacs, bee,
Yeah,
black
yeah,
and yellow flying with
yeah,
the stinger, wasp. The data
exactly.
is black and yellow.
Yeah,
And so now, and the rules might be something like identify which of these it is.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it's a pollen sac equals bee, 40-ounce
Yeah,
beer equals Pittsburgh fan, and
yeah.
stinger equals
That's the
wasp.
probability, right? It's like, yes, but there are certain rules that make up what is a bee and what is a wasp. That's not the data you were given from the external circumstance,
Right.
but it's the data that you have already in the terms of a rule system where you already have a rule that define what are the rules that
So I think
make
that's where
a
I'm getting
bee
stuck is I've
or a
been
wasp.
looking at rules is how AI uses the context, but the rules are they're embedded in the context. So rules are part of the context. Rules aren't a rules engine.
Well, I, you
The
know,
rules come later, it sounds like.
the rules are split away from the LLM system itself. So at least in my system,
Yeah.
it's the LLM that communicates with the rule base. It's a graph based rule system, a directed cyclical graph to be more concise, because the way that the rules in our system is made up is based on a very specific logic form that allows you to create a structure where you can make decisions based on, yeah, on a very specific logic. I don't know. I can't divulge too much information. We are in the
When is
process
this
of getting
coming
a
out? When do
patent,
we
so
get
it's like,
when do we get to see the thing? Obviously, patent pending.
yeah. Well, I don't want to publicize it here. I mean, but you know, as a friend, I would, have a chat with you personally about it and give you a bit more information. I can't divulge it publicly yet.
Okay,
Let's say.
we'll get there, I
Uh,
imagine.
Hey, Alan and
yes.
Alan and Elliot, can this to fit the respecting and protecting your IP, something that's already out there about hooks reinforcing rules? Because a lot of people just put rules out there, but they don't put the hook on the back end to make sure that it sticks and works. So is that something that you can expand on that the group can take away and use at our level without infringing on your IP?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's a higher level. So, in the sense of a hook, what do you mean in a matching sense, or just want to clarify?
Well, no, so in the case of me, um, I go all down the whole of Claude and I'm capturing
Ah,
all of my conversations, right?
mhm.
And the minute it does something that it has information about, but I'm like, no, 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 that's not how I wanted it in this case with this stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to correct you with this
Mhm.
specific line. And then there's a hook enforcement on the back end where it stops it. So that's where I'm
Yeah.
going with this about how you could explain that to the crowd, to the audience rather, and they can implement that right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think you already to some degree explained it. It's a
I
great
just don't know
point,
if I'm saying it too cloudy, you know?
No, I just you're right. It is. I think Claude has a great system for building in hooks and implementing them in a way when you have an engagement in Claude, you should look at how to create. I call, I make plugins for, when I code with Claude, and they have skills, hooks, sub-agents, and these are all about feeding a context window in a very concise manner, and restraining the context window. As you say, the hook recognizes a specific situation and then it feeds into the context window, again, a constraint. And that's why for me, it's it's very helpful to think about the LLMs as really it is an instance that has a given context window. You need to be very concise with it, lead it in the right direction, and constrain it in from deviating from that, direction. And that is where, hooks and skills are very helpful, basically, the way I see it. I think we don't, to make a full excursion into how to create them and stuff like that. I think this is not probably we have time for, or yeah, that could maybe be another. Uh, but that would be more like a, I think there are plenty of YouTube videos out there how to do skills and hooks and all of these. I say the concept of it that people should have in mind is really just to say, um, look into managing your context window in a way where you are guiding your LLMs. Or if I say you, but what I mean is you create agents that feed your context window in a very specific manner when you call them, right? It's like that's the important part. Very practically and short-term applicable until our logic engine is released. then then it's going to be a lot smarter.
Elliot, you have your hand up.
Yeah, and it just feeds into that point actually. Given these problems Alan has touched on with current limitations of context and how they work with rules and general generation from LLMs and their context windows, should these problems be solved, maybe it's through us, maybe it's through other technology providers, but it's my opinion, and it's something for everybody to get excited about, that this truly unlocks autonomous systems. If you don't have those breakdowns in those two issues. So I just wanted to
There's
add that to that.
Yeah, I would say, like, just as a, there's a reason why Palantir is a multi-billion dollar company, right? I mean, all they are is a expert domain built context, amplifier or manager. That's basically what Palantir is. You get these expert domain builders in, and you spend months and years on mapping out a digital twin of your company as an ontology. What we're proposing is instead of having domain experts do it, to automate the process of creating the ontology and doing a rule ontology instead of a business domain ontology. So it understands rules instead of understanding business domains. I think that's the really key part, that you can feed. Again, sorry, Kasim, if I'm um, um, taking it into a direction again where it's like the maybe I want to separate. You have incoming data. When I talk about context, that is your data. That is your internal data that you use to, let's say, look at the incoming data and make sure that the incoming data is matching to what your context say that you should do with this data, or update your internal context if there's patterns in this incoming data that is helpful for you as a company. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, again, I think on a very broad scale, I understand, you know, the I understand the workflow that you're describing
Mhm.
and how to do it. It sounds like y'all are building something specifically.
Yes.
I'd love to know, and we'll tee Neil and Dylan up first, but I'd love to know from you, Alan, like before we make a departure today, what's something that small businesses should do? Like, what's the thing to do? The action item right now today, it might be something as simple as, export everything you have into a
Well,
knowledge base or markdown file or
I think it's really, really important to create files that your collective LLMs as a company have common access to, so you can share knowledge across different people and different departments, right?
Mhm.
That's how we normally do it in a company is we have meetings across different departments, and we have these relays of Google Drive files that we say, when the marketing department is doing this, then the sales department must do that. Now you can actually, if you share a common knowledge base using files, and using, I think, you know, you probably still need to modify Carpathes a little bit to fit to your internal structure or business. Again, this will be automated soon. um, but really, the important part is to say, I had a friend in Australia who's really, he had to go through a really hard process of doing this, to onboard his team into this way of being able to have files that they can simply say, when somebody uses their LLM, it feeds into the file, so that when the other person open up their LLM, now this new knowledge is fed into his LLM, so he also knows what's going on. It's really about sharing information in the end in the most efficient way. And that's too restrictive if you don't update a knowledge base that you have internally in a small company. So you really need to make some either. I would say the easiest way to do it is just to make some files like Carpathy did, instead of doing the full RAG setup and everything. As he has also stated, it has shown to be too rudimentary in its access layer when it comes to vector search. It doesn't do the job properly, let's say. It misses out on the relations between. That's why he did it in a wiki style, so that whenever he gets a text, then it can see that it has a link to a relation, and that relation can be, well, if you're reading this, you must also read this file over here, right? That's a relation you can build between two files. So this way the LLM can get the knowledge of this file, but now it knows it must also read this file. So you build in links that have relations. Again, I think the relations are super important and they need a specific format. And that's part of, why it's so important, how you do it. But in the short term, I think just getting the LLMs to kind of, I don't want to say brute force, but it is a little bit of brute forcing. Just get the agent to say, do a wiki for me that has links so you can, organize the files in a way that have some relations when there needs to be relations between the different files.
Neil, hand up.
Yeah. So everything you've been saying really just clicked for me in the last 10 minutes, and I fully agree with what you're doing. So there's that. But so so there's also when we're dealing with a context of a business or whatever, to my mind, the things that are already embedded in the training don't need to be repeated. And so, like, if there's a door, I don't need to spell out the rule that I grip the doorknob with my hand and I rotate it and then I push, right? On the other hand, if I'm a firefighter and I see a door and I kick it open and that's my procedure,
Yeah.
that rule needs to be specified because it's
Yes.
a difference from the embodiment of the internet.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's a good example. And something like you do have specific rules in companies, as you say. Generally speaking, contractors might be privy to some specific data files in general companies. I mean, but some companies have protected data. So again, this is where you have these rules that are specific to you. That's why I said, I opened up our conversation with saying the LLMs are great for general things, but it doesn't know anything in particular.
Right.
And I meant that when I say particular, then it's very concise to say particular. It compresses data, right? That's what it does. So it doesn't know anything in particular, but it knows a lot of general things, right? And now what you need to do is, again, you want particular things inside of companies. Obviously, that's what knowledge bases are for. Now, that's what helps guide their context. Again, I'm using context, but that really is what helps, them be helpful to you as a company. You need to guide them, and for that you need to have a knowledge base that can be shared across your company. I think that's very important.
Dylan.
I don't know if this portion of things has been said or explained yet, so stop me if it has. But so LLMs, the math involved is probabilistic. There's a margin of error. There's another kind of math called discrete math that most of you have probably not seen before, where the result is like an essay proving something. This is this There's a set of rules that you apply to things. The proof for 1 + 1 = 2 was written in 1912. It's 300 pages long. So they're trying to put that type of math on top of the LLM probabilistic math because it does not have a margin of error. And the LLM has a margin of error that we cannot eliminate. And these rules are created from your policies, and they will also leave a paper trail. These are the rules that were followed in this decision. And so then if the decision is wrong, you know why that decision was made.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The hard part is really bridging the gap between probabilistic space and discrete space and finding a match between the two. That's the difficult part. I mean, that's why you need, as I said, tensor logic, because you can actually um, find distances between a discrete rule set and a probabilistic or continuous data that describes something that is close to that rule. This is also why expert systems, to some degree, failed back in the day, is because whenever you had any noise in the data, the expert systems would just go like, nope, not a match. Sorry, can't do it, right? Um, and that's why LLMs are so powerful. It's like, it doesn't matter if there's no match. It's close enough to something that mimic, it's an elephant, kind of. It's missing a leg, but that doesn't matter. It's still an elephant, probabilistically speaking. So, but again, what's missing in the aspect of LLMs is really once you snap into, hey, it's an elephant. Okay, well then I know it's a mammal. Then I know that it does breastfeed. It's a vertebrate. All of these things that are discrete informations about. It's an elephant. It has specific properties to it, and then you can start inferring things. In LLM space, you can't really discretely infer multiple steps down the ladder of the logic deduction chain. And that is, in some scenarios, extremely important to be able to do logic inference yeah, specifically when it comes to rules. Ask any financial company or medical, all of these companies that needs to maintain their liabilities. I mean, we have had plenty of examples where the Canadian airline company or the Deloitte situation where it did wrong references and they got fined millions for not, for using an LLM and it hallucinated, right? But this was very rudimentary. There's a lot more situations where yeah, things can be interesting and go wrong.
I think Neil actually nailed it. I am struggling with the idea that we can vectorize all of human decision making.
Well, I think it's it's a matter of importance to say that we can't automate all future decision making in the sense that there won't be any new situation that comes up. I mean, the world is dynamic, so
that's the problem with ontology, which I Googled, by the way, because
Mhm.
I thought I understood what ontological thinking was, and then you started talking about it, and I'm like, I need to go back. So
Well,
from an ontological perspective, the issue is you can't describe ontologically a hammer, right? Like, because you have to choose a point in time. Because a
yeah.
hammer, like you could describe like the chemical makeup of a hammer, right? Like this is where it exists on the, it has this much lead and this much whatever. So that's like all the way back,
Mm.
but that's so far back that it's not functional. But then if you flash forward, it's like a hammer's a tool, and it's a weapon, and it's a symbol, and it's a paperweight,
Yeah.
and
Well-
it's so hyper dependent.
Cosm, I think the key thing is one of the things that came out of all this development is that, the classic example was training an AI to recognize the picture of a cat, right? And if it was just a cat like on the grass, eventually it figured it out, but then you rotate it like 3 degrees and it couldn't see it anymore. And eventually, through the different training methods, they were able to train it to recognize cats in all different kinds of poses, at all different kinds of settings, at all different orientations. And when they looked at the data, there's like 100 different dimensions that the LLM is actually measuring the catness on.
Hmm.
And we don't know, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we know what those dimensions actually are internal to the system.
Right. Well, so
No,
that's the problem here is I feel like it's square peg round hole because LLMs are trained, they're analogical thinkers. And they're trained on analogical thinking. And anything ontological or otherwise is axiomatic thinking. And I don't think we can take an analogical tool and apply axiomatic thinking without there being a breakdown at a level that we'll never be able to see. You know what I mean?
Again, the particular we won't be able to see, but the
Yeah.
general we will. So it's like, I can use an LLM to see that this is an elephant. Once I see it's an elephant, now I know what properties I'm dealing with. That's the discrete space. Discrete space is universal, right? It's not particular. Then if it is particular, then it's not discrete anymore, basically. And that's the crux of it is just simply to say, oh, of course you can describe a particular thing, but you can't describe it perfectly. Sure, that's impossible, but you can describe it according to the data that you receive.
Yeah, well,
If you
and to the
understand
point
what I
that Dylan made in chat, it's how does it apply to you? Which actually goes all the way back to the first thing that I was saying, which is rules are context dependent, but context is input and output, and you don't have your input context necessarily, or your output context necessarily. And so you almost need like a flywheel for context modification based off of the goal and the intended use of the data.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I'm not claiming that our system will be able to set goals because that's to some degree I would argue is a human function. It's like value. I always say that, whenever people say, oh, what are humans left to do? And the only thing that well, not the only thing, but one of the things that will never, or maybe we'll see, I guess. I never want to say never, but value judgments are not something that LLMs that I see in the near future that they are able to do. It's
To be honest with you, value judgments aren't things that I see humans being able to do.
did I say humans?
No, I'm saying like you said
okay.
LLMs, I'm saying humans.
Well,
like if you just look at the
any
state of our
human does
world.
value judgments, whether we agree on them or
Yeah.
not. That's the question, but it's still I still do a value judgment, whether you agree it has value or not. That's again, value judgments are subjective to to humans, and that's not something you can generalize. It's
Well, I think the point that I'm trying or marshaling towards is human decision making. If decision making is meant to be a value judgment, our value judgments very rarely, if ever, line up with our purported values. So like everybody on this call says, I value life, right? Or I value health, but everybody on this call has consumed sugar today, which is an absolute, complete, and total poison, right? So
Sure.
like the decision making aligned with the value judgment. I just don't think if that's where we're going to draw the line on technology, I don't think we've gotten it any better either. The LLMs could probably do
yeah.
it.
I mean, I would, again, argue that you obviously did a value judgment when you, consumed the sugar. You valued your short-term, bliss over your long-term well-being.
Well, no, you're exactly right, and I think that's what you've proven the fact that we can't do value judgments effectively or well. We do them.
That's a different matter.
Yeah.
Whether you do it well or not, that's an entirely different matter. You still do a value
still do
judgment
them.
in the act of consuming that Mars bar or whatever it is you gravitate towards. you
Alan,
know,
how do we help you, man? What's the ask that you would have of the council? Is there anything we can do to pay back the time you've given us?
no,
You're not allowed to say
I
nothing. You can't. Everybody needs something. You got to tell us what it is because we might be able to help.
well, I mean, I'm always interested in feedback. How well, I didn't communicate too much around our system today because I wanted to keep it fairly, approachable and practical as much as possible. But I'm always interested in feedback, and if people have any, um, critical feedback if I can improve my presentation somewhat, I tend to, I know, wander down rabbit holes and
Oh, the
um,
rabbit holes are part
I
of
have
your
a
appeal,
suggestion
dude.
for you, actually, Alan.
yeah,
So you made the point, several times about the general versus the specific, and I can't remember the exact line that you said in the middle there,
mm,
but the thing that makes your company or your organization or your whatever valuable is the way in which you are different from everything else.
I
And
mean,
you
yeah, thanks.
and I think what you're trying to do is trying to isolate the rules behind what makes them different and valuable.
Yeah,
And so I think that's a much easier framing for people to understand is like
okay,
the reason you're you is because you're not everybody else, right?
yeah, thanks.
And
I
that's true
mean,
for you personally, it's true for your business, it's true for whatever level of analysis you want to put it at.
We
yeah,
need to get you a really good analogy, dude. Dylan, who's on
yes,
this call, who's wicked smart, has this really brilliant Avengers analogy that was just such an unlock for, I think, all of us. We need to get you your own Avengers analogy. Uh, because
yeah,
it would just make it more accessible. And you
yeah,
know what it would do too? It would root some of the semantic confusion.
yeah,
Because all the words can mean a lot of things, and so it would be really helpful to just be able to like
yes,
plant a flag and say like
yeah,
data is this, context is that.
yeah. I totally agree. I mean, that is what I'm can say struggling with, but hopefully, I mean, it's also to some degree, as I told Elliot, I'm happy to go on the call. It's a little bit, I don't always function well when I am restricted in what I can share,
So this is all Elliot's
uh,
fault, really. Like if
yeah,
yeah,
no,
the leash
exactly.
were off. Yeah.
No, but I'd love to share more about our architecture internally, right? I mean, that's, I'm passionate about this. I think we're on an extremely, well, I mean, I might be hubristic and head in the clouds, but to me, this is what AI is missing. It needs a bridge to a logic discrete space that matches up with the analog space, as you call it,
Mm.
Kasim, in order to reason and to be logic together with. I mean, I use Kahneman a lot when it says he calls it system one and system two, right? That was his famous example of saying the intuitive space. I would say that's the LLM that pattern matches and really sees things as patterns really quickly. But system two is the one that then is able to deduce and infer and create new knowledge to a degree as well. And that's to me is they need to be put together so we can yeah get to the next level of
Well, it
AI.
sounds like you're building the other half of AI.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Yes,
Um,
the brain.
yeah.
Exactly.
Y'all, I'm
Yeah.
fried. I don't know about you guys. I really tried my best to just wrap my head all the way around this, and I think I failed miserably. But I do feel uh
That that's on me a little bit as well. So I
oh
mean,
no, it's not, dude. I promise you.
I think it is. It is.
Yeah.
As you said, yeah, I need some better analogies and well, that's what I would love to also get your personal perspective on and maybe I get a chance to talk a bit more with because I know you have a great mind and actually getting these analogies out of these things if you have the time for it, Kazim. But that's me asking for it. That's maybe what I would they ask, but that's very personal. But I'd love to get you to if you say that you're still a little bit, I would love to give you some more info. So maybe I can get it to click.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to sick the
Yeah.
council on it too. Somebody in chat said they're gonna. I forget who was that.
I was trying very hard to figure out what context is in relation to Tony Stark, and I just have not gotten it quite yet.
Yeah. So that's the
Cool.
contest now, is who can pony up the best analogy for Allan. And Allan, I'll noodle
Yeah.
on it as well. And if we have the opportunity to talk offline and I understood the product a little more, maybe I'd be a little bit more
Yeah.
adept at it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna hop.
I'd love that.
Yeah, Allan, you're the man. I really appreciate you. If people want to follow you or engage with you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably I mean, I have a Twitter. I'm not very active, so I'm mostly on Discord in those obscure little AI communities, to be fair. So that's it. If I'll share it with Elliot, and he can maybe share it with you guys if
That's great. We'll drop it
yeah.
into the private WhatsApp thread. If you're watching this, you can always subscribe to the Daily Sigh. We have this summarized and sent out via email every day or week. If you want to join the live Zooms, you can go to dailysigh.ai, click join live. You'll be redirected to my free forever community where you can join, and you'll have access to that link instead of the calendar. We have a private WhatsApp community just for the folks that jump on the Zoom. Zoomers, I'm going to drop that link again into the chat before we jet. We're going to have multiple guests on. None of them nearly as smart as Allan, but all of them really interesting. If there's somebody else that you want to hear from, please let
Sure,
me
that's
know,
not
and I'll do
true.
my best to track them down. Tommy Mello's coming Tuesday, which is going to be a lot of fun. He's going to be here for the latter half hour. He has very limited time. And so we'll be super respectful of that, and I'll, maybe reserve more of it for Q&A than normal. And Allan, you're the guest. Last words to you.
Well, keep digging at it. I think, this thing is, I might be, hyperbolic, but I think we're entering in a new information age that, a lot of people I hear is crying about it and trying to fight it. I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime to get into the information age, and this is the next stage. I think it's going to uproot and revolutionize the digital space. The interface to knowledge will change. I think most of it will go through different interfaces now. Software as a service companies will, we'll see, but a lot of them will be uprooted.
Yes, we will.
Yeah. So that's going to be very interesting. I'm excited, and I think it could be a beautiful future. So I'm optimistic.
I am too. And for the most part, I like you said, I think we'll see. Allan, I really appreciate you. Council, I appreciate you too. Y'all,
Same.
this was awesome.
Yeah.
We go live every single day at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Awesome.